Okay, so as a note, I didn't show this before, but this is the California Hauler Peterbilt 359. So I want this piece right here. Okay, this is the cabin sleeper. It's an old school cabin sleeper. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this parts here just for this cabin sleeper, and it's going to be put onto the truck, to the chassis for the race car hauler. So that's a modification I'm going to be doing. So these next parts basically are going to be from here. Okay. Okay, guys, so I figured I better talk on this one a little bit. So I want to just explain a couple of things. So, as you guys have been seeing, I just got done building the sleeping cab for the trip and everything. So I'm not worried about the inside. I'm going to end up painting the bed and everything like that, but I'm leaving the inside walls white because I would want them white so you could have some light. Eventually the cab will go on like that, and there's going to be an air conditioning vent that goes from the main cab over to this. So, and you got to have a little bit of eye candy inside there, you know. I mean, hey, the driver's got to have something. Okay, so what I had to figure out is that pretty much both chassis, both frames are just about dead on as far as size. When you get everything stretched out, laid out perfectly and everything, they're pretty much right on the money. So, but as you can see with the city truck, there's a step right here and then it goes across. So that ends up being the base for the back of the C600 delivery truck, the big square box. This is just taped together so I could see how it goes and everything. I don't have it glued yet because I've been trying to figure it out. So this is the frame for the car hauler, the race car hauler. Again, the thought was pretty much, you know, it's a standard cab configuration with the engine in the front, and then there's the carrier, right, the back. Meanwhile, this is a cab over, and that's the design I wanted because it's more 60s looking and everything. That's the key, and this is just taped in. So it has a different engine configuration because of the seat here at the back and everything. So I couldn't just use the engine from the other one and put it on because it's not going to fit right. So what I figured out, and because I want to add the sleeper cab to it, there's the way it's set up, the back of the hauler goes up to this point. So I needed to make sure I had some room to put the cab on the back of it, which actually it fits perfectly. So that's going to go about, so that will go there. Okay. So the back of the hauler is going to go there, that's going to go there, and then I'm going to put the other part, this is going to be the where the cab goes on the city hauler, okay? So that's going to go here. But what I have to do, and I figured the easiest thing to do, and there may be another way, but this is the only way it came to me. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the front section here that holds the cab. And then that is going to get put on here, where I figured out, because this is where the front engine and everything sets for the car hauler. So it pretty much goes back to that point, but I needed to leave room for the sleeper cab. So I'm going to end up putting the front of that chassis there, and then the cab over is going to go like that. Pretty much. It's pretty close to that right there. And then this thing will be here, and then you'll actually have the rest of it, and it's going to fit. So it's barely going to, all I'm really extending is this distance. That's it. But it's really close to this part right here, which is, it holds part, I believe it's a transmission holder. And maybe by the end, yeah. So what I'm going to end up doing is using the rear end of this part with the very front end of this part. And when you look at the city cab, or the delivery cab, the delivery truck, there's the box back that goes on it. They don't actually show you where it puts on, but anyway. But here at the beginning on the chassis, right, you see where the engine and everything all fits in front of this section here, and then the transmission goes back under the tunnel. But the rest of the cab all goes on this front end. Steering box, bumper grill, all of the front steering components and everything are all going to be forward of that part. So this whole front end is going to get basically transferred to this frame. And it's going to be even with the frame, so there won't be any like weird thing. And if the springs, if the front springs end up being too high or too low or whatever, I'll just use styrene and stuff and I'll just adjust them. Okay. Not sure which fuel tank I'm going to use. I may do a hybrid of different tanks, because there's the tank there. Now, if the rear axle and springs and everything will fit into this, then I'll use it, but I think it won't be an issue to just use the LN 8000, the race car transporter's rear end, which all goes on there. The big thing I have to make sure is that this height back here matches the front height of this one here, just because the configuration's a little different. And there's probably a simpler, easier way to do it, but I don't know. I'm just going to go off of this, because you can see that they had it set up that this cab goes right there in front of that battery box. The battery box goes in front of right there, which is just behind the second cross member where the cab mount goes. And that's going to be that double set of holes right there. And that's actually where the other gas tank for this kit goes, is right there. The battery box on the delivery truck actually goes up front, up here. So I'm not too worried about where a battery box goes or anything. I can make modifications with that. So the next big challenge, really, I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I'll just use some styrene pieces to, in essence, just meld this chassis together, weld the chassis together for it. And see, and there's the whole back end and everything that's going to go. And you can see that it just goes on. Sorry, there's a little bit of a glare. It's a little bright. Just goes on behind the cab right there. So I know it's going to end up fitting right behind that spot. Actually goes right there. So, and then it's going to be there. And then that's going to be there. Anyway, I like it. I like the way it's going. It's nice that this is just about the same width. I mean, it's daggone near perfect, which I love. So I'm actually very happy with that. So what I'm going to be doing next is slowly using this little precision saw to cut this part of this front of the chassis off of the delivery truck so that I can put it onto here, and then I'll have to cut this front section off here so that I can put that onto there. Because I need the way all of the forward cab tilt and all the engine mounts and everything in the engine for this fits inside here, so I need this on the front there. Anyway, that's what I'll be doing next. Okay, so I just got done cutting these two pieces from the race car hauler. Get it back in the holes. There we go. I mean, and look at that. They're the same width. Like, hallelujah. Now, as you can see, they're a little bit. So these are a little bit deeper. And in order to make sure everything is level, I'm going to go with the top, and I'll make adjustments from there. I may have to make a slight adjustments on the ride height. But they're looking there. And I'm just going to take some styrene and put it on the inside there. So that's that part. So now I'm going to finish gluing this together and then keep moving. Okay, I don't have any C channel. Who cares? I've got 0.040 thick styrene that I'm going to use, which is just a hair under the thickness of what that is. So it actually will do just fine. So what I figured out is that I need I don't know what to call it, the weld plate, I'm going to call it, to go 7 millimeters in this side and 7 millimeters this way. So I'm going to go 14 millimeters. So I need a piece that's 14 millimeters. So five, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 millimeters is right there. 14 millimeters. That's fine. I'm going to go off of that way. Yeah, 14 millimeters will be fine. Yeah, we're going to go 5. Sorry, it might be a glare. Okay, a little explanation time, just in case anybody else decides they want to do this. So, a couple of small modifications I have to do to the chassis in order to get this to work. Okay, these are the instructions from the LN 8000, right? The race car transporter. Okay, there's the chassis on it, right? And as you can see on the chassis, that part that I use, right, it's just one solid, or what, same height all the way back. Okay, so the front half of the C600 truck, this one, has a slight downward angle to it. Okay, and if you notice in that little spot right there, there's a little gap where I wanted to make sure this lined up at the top. Everything had to line up at the top, otherwise it'd be down just a little bit. Probably not noticeable in real life, but anyway, it's the decision I went with, okay? So now here, I've got the front axle on, right? The biggest thing is I want this to be as close as possible to the center line of the original as I can, otherwise it was going to end up like this. Kind of like a hot rod stance. This is extreme, okay? But, you know, back is going to be taller than the front. Okay, here's the back of the chassis that I cut off, okay? So notice here, it's almost the same thickness or the same depth or whatever you want to say as the other one, okay? But it's got this rise up here where they put the box truck on. But notice back here, see how it angles, right? It has this angle cut and goes down. So when you line it up with the front one, the main frame rails are fine and the box is fine, okay? But when you line it up, that's what it looks like at the rear, okay? So the rear springs, when they go on there, they're a little taller than the original. I'm sorry, than the LN 8000. Okay, so there that lines up with the front axle, but it doesn't line up with the other frame rails. Okay, so on the other frame rails, this ends up being, I can't use this one because it's got this weird angle cut. I could, but I'm not going to worry about it. So I realized what I did is I took the difference, or I measured between the C600 rear springs or suspension, and this is the LN 8000 transmission suspension, rear suspension, okay? So when you line up the exact point where it goes into the frame rail, you can see that they're slightly different. They're really close. Okay, actually they're almost identical as far as they're almost identical. They're off maybe a millimeter. Okay? But when you put this on the LN 8000 in the original position, it ends up putting the rear suspension, the rear axle, you can even see it right there, it's below the front axle. I mean, you can even see the extreme angle. Okay, it's like that. So it looked like a hot rod. You don't want that really in a truck. It'd be fine, but just to make sure it's structurally integrity and all that stuff, I want to make sure it's as level as possible. Whatever. So what I figured is I want to use the LN 8000 rear suspension with the LN frame. So I realized that all I got to do is I kind of measured the difference between the original mounting hole and where this would match up with it, and then where I needed how much to bring it up. It comes out to like, I don't know, 5 millimeters or 4 millimeters. So that's what I did. So I marked it, went straight above, drilled 2 new holes, bam, there we go. It's just barely under the frame rail. So worst case, I can just, make a little divot for the rear axle. But when you look at it, now the front and the rear are almost dead straight. Let me see if I can show it that way. The front and the rear. Yeah, you can't see it. So the front and the rear, center of the axle are almost dead straight. I mean, now it's only maybe a millimeter, which will barely be noticeable when I build the truck. But it's also parallel. So that's all I had to do. But it took a minute to figure it out. So pretty much I just went straight above the existing mounting point, drilled 2 new holes to what you just saw me do, or I'll probably do it, yeah, I'll do the holes after this. And bam, they ended up being perfectly in line with that top rivet line. And even with those mounts in there, the spring perch, or whatever you want to call it, secondary spring perch, it fits perfectly over top of it. So only an engineer or somebody who knows trucks really, really well will even notice. And boom, there you go. It'll be, the ride height will be close enough. So anyway, that's how I fixed that issue. Okay? So if you're going to mix the LN 8000, the race car hauler, right? If you're going to mix the LN 8000 with the Ford C600, the LN race transporter with the Ford C600, just know that's one of the big things you're going to have to deal with. So I also wanted to use the C600 wheels because I love these spider looking wheels. I love these. These are cool as hell. And I'm going to do a special paint job on them. And I mixed up the tires so many times, I can't remember if these are the original tires that came in with the LN 8000 or came in the Ford C600. But they're the thicker tires width-wise than the other ones. And I'm like, I like the look of these. I'm going with them. These all fit in perfectly with them. It fits in just fine. So no issues with the fitting on the tires. Okay. So I'm going to use the C600 wheels, and I think the tires, but then maybe the tires from the 8000 with this chassis. And I'm using the original LN 8000 rear transmission springs suspension with the LN 8000 frame. And since it's a cab over for the C600, I kept all of the original front drivetrain suspension with springs and everything so that everything would match up and look right for a cab over truck, especially because I'm going to keep it to where the cab can lift forward. Okay? And I also had to leave space in here to make sure that, you know, the sleeper bed, the sleeper unit was going to sit on it and still be able to be with the original cab, which it will. It has enough room. And then the body will go all the way out this way. So the race car transport hauler. It's going to look really cool. I like it. And then I forgot, I found the window out of the LN 8000. I'm sorry, out of the Peterbilt, so I could just fit that and close that window up so you can still have sunlight. And I'll probably end up putting like some, I'm debating about putting curtains or something like that to where you can draw a curtain or whatever, so you don't have to, somebody peeking in or whatever. Anyway. All right, so enough of the explanation part. There's that, continuing to build.